This session will walk you through how to read a research review article. Research reviews are a particular type of research article that gather together other research articles, usually studies, and forms an aggregated analysis, analyzing all of the articles together. There are different types of review articles. What I've selected today is a systematic review that has all of the anatomical features of a research review article. Some of them will look familiar, some of them will look a little bit different if you're used to reading outcomes research. So first, we're looking at non-pharmacologic therapies for low back pain. The title is actually very descriptive and right on target. That doesn't often happen, so don't make decisions to read articles or include them based upon the title. Sometimes articles will say, this is a systematic review, and they might have used systematic methods but not done any type of systematic analysis or synthesized analysis, so just keep that in mind. It's important when you're looking at review articles to look at who the authors are that published the article. This has a long list of people that contributed to it. And generally speaking, articles get into peer-reviewed journals by authors that have some experience. But you always just want to take a cursory look and say, who are these people? Where are they from? And then we move into the anatomy of the research article. First, the abstract. This is not specifically called abstract, but it is the abstract. It's a summary. And so the abstract serves two purposes in a research article. One is to help you, the researcher, decide whether you want to read it or not. The other purpose is that the words contained in the abstract form metadata that help the article be properly indexed. So when you are going to read a research article, ignore the abstract. We're going to read it. We don't need to decide. So we'll skip the abstract, and we want to look first for the purpose statement. So whatever the length of the introduction is, go to the very last paragraph before the methods. We want to pop up and we want to look for the purpose statement. And here it is, beautifully put. The purpose of this article is to review the current evidence on the benefits and harms of non-pharmacologic therapies for low back pain. And so there's always a purpose statement here, there's always an aim here, and this helps you get the background information that the researchers then put elsewhere in the paragraph without having to read through it. For your own research, later on you can go back, look through the introduction, look at the information that they cite to add that to your list of general resource materials that you're going to have kind of, floating in and around your desk. So we've got the purpose, we know non-pharmacologic therapies, low back pain. And then we're going to move into the methods. And in the methods section, they write that detailed methods, including blah, 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 are available in the full report. And so they're not disclosing everything here. And that's a little bit problematic. But they did develop a protocol. They reported it elsewhere. This is becoming very popular. But what we want to know with a research review is we want to know where they searched, what their search terms were, what their inclusion criteria were, and their exclusion criteria. All of that introduces bias in the results. Where they searched, what search terms they used, inclusion and exclusion criteria. So that's how we have a systematic review. You document it so that somebody else can replicate your search. So data sources and search. And so they searched Medline using Ovid. Ovid's the platform. They searched registers of controlled trials, the Cochrane database of systematic reviews, and then they had a previous set of guidelines. This is really important. So later on, we will find the date range that they put together. Actually, searches were updated through November 2016. Here's something that's important about systematic reviews. Research is not like milk. It does not go bad. It does not expire. It's popular to say, let's only look at research performed in the past 5 years. And that's a little misguided, because if there has not been a review 5 years ago, you're missing a lot of research studies that could be important. So you want to look at when the last review was done and pick up from there, cite that material, pick up where that leaves off, and then look at material that's more recent. If there has not been a systematic review on your topic, you really ought to look at every publication you can get your hands on. So they have their searches were updated through November 2016, And they have their study selection, and they describe this here. The population was adults with acute and subacute or chronic non-radicular or radicular low back pain. So this information we have, I can highlight it here. And we're looking at low back pain, and then they have excluded conditions, back pain due to cancer, fractures, other types of causes. And so when they found those studies, they disregarded them. They included randomized trials. So randomization was important. They were looking for randomization. So cohort studies were out, matched case control studies were out, and they were looking at a specific list of therapies that they disclose here. And so exercise, spinal manipulation, acupuncture, etc., etc., and this will show up in the results, but this sets their search terms, and it also helps us look at what it was compared to. So if there's a randomized trial with therapies, patients were randomized to something else, and that would be versus a sham condition, a wait list, or usual care, or comparisons between one therapy or another. So this also is important to set the stage for this, to tell us what studies got excluded as much as what got included. So as they're going through this, sometimes it's confusing to sort out, and making notes in the margin will help, but we want to be able to set the parameters to say, if there were large cohort studies somewhere, those got ignored in this research, they're looking at randomized trials. When they're looking at a comparison versus a sham condition or wait list or usual care, what they're trying to look at in this review is there any effect of these therapies at all? Any effect at all? The next thing to add to this is the comparison between one therapy and another. Are there any differences of these therapies when compared to each other? So as you're looking at this, something that comes to mind is what's not included here would be any studies that compared these therapies to medication, to surgery. And so when we're looking at non-pharmacologic therapies, we're not doing the comparison to pharmacologic therapies in this paper. So they have a lot more detail on study selection, and then data extraction and quality assessment. So data extraction in research reviews and in all research is really important. They extract information from the studies, and this can be done a variety of ways when you're working with a team using RevMan software, using Microsoft Access, using spreadsheets, things of that nature. They extract information, and let's scroll back on up here, and they have one investigator that extracted information to independently assess the quality of each study as good, fair, or poor by using criteria developed by the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force for randomized trial. And the comparative studies, not entirely sure, but you really want to look in the methods first to figure out how they arrived at these studies and what they did with them. And so they had grading that determined where the studies fell within the systematic review, and then they have the synthesis and analysis of data. Sometimes systematic reviews just say we extracted information, now we'll report it. These authors are giving us a little bit more information to look at quality, and when they had enough information from the studies to report on a meta-analysis, then they reported on that as well. So after we go through the methods, we want to get to, oh yes, and the funding source, just real quick, the role of the funding source. Funding sources are important to get research done. This does not always imply that there was bias. It just means the researchers got paid. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality is one of the places that, part of the U.S. government system, DHHS, that funds research. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's bias, but for example, if this research review was a review on a specific medical device and the funding was provided by the medical device company, you just want to look at that and say, is there anything about the inclusion criteria of studies that might affect what I'm seeing here? So that's how you want to use the funder information. When you get to the results section, this is nicely laid out because they have summaries for each of the therapies or therapeutic interventions that were included, and they also have some flowcharts. So if you're a flowchart person, you can look at the diagram and try to figure out how many studies were included in this review. That's important for something like this because it's an enormous article with very short summaries. So when they synthesize the information in the review, when you get into the results, what they're not doing here is summarizing each individual study. It's not an annotated bibliography. they first pulled together 122 trials that evaluated exercise. There were a couple of systematic reviews that had 71 unique trials, and then they had 51 additional trials. So this tells you where they got the articles from and then how the exercise interventions appeared in the studies. So then we scroll down. This is the flow chart that shows where they got all of their articles. So again, if you're one student or one researcher, this would be extraordinarily hard to execute on your own, and that's why faculty always try and get you to use very specific topics. But if we scroll down into the review itself, you'll see that there's a summary for Tai Chi, one for yoga. This is still the section on exercise on the left, mindfulness-based stress reduction. So they're pulling together the studies and they're analyzing them as a group. So it would be possible, in theory, to do an entire systematic review on just mindfulness-based stress reduction for chronic idiopathic low back pain or chronic non-radicular low back pain. And so in this case, they're just trying to put all the non-pharmacologic therapies together because they wanted to use it to develop a guideline. So in the results section, again, this is nicely broken out. They provide some summaries of the different comparisons, the magnitude of the effect on pain and function. So they give a lot of useful information here in the tables, and we don't necessarily need to get all mired in the weeds of the different statistical significance values, the critical value, the F value, that kind of thing. You'll see that there is more detailed information presented in the meta-analysis part of this article that, again, we wanted to say, what's your takeaway? The takeaway is to say, is or are these therapies better than nothing? Is one better than another? So the detail in the results section here is very substantial for this article. And if we scroll down here, we want to just note something. Because of what they were looking for, they included one section on potential harms for the interventions. So what they didn't do was do a review on safety of these treatments because these treatments are widely available. They did a review on efficacy of these treatments as an option compared to no treatment at all, and did a quick section on harms just to acknowledge that in the various studies, because that's always an accusation. Is the therapy safe? Is it effective? And we always bring that question first. So we get to the discussion section. The results section, that's where you should spend most of your time, really looking at this and saying, what is my takeaway depending on my role in healthcare? The discussion section generally begins with some conclusions about what was found in the research review, and that's what we generally see in the first couple of paragraphs. The next part of the discussion section is a section on limitations. So their conclusions are quite lengthy, but you want to look for a paragraph on limitations, and this usually should be no more than a paragraph. And authors are obliged to disclose limitations of the research, and for a review, one of the limitations is the inclusion criteria. In this case, though, we can look at this and say, all right, there were inclusion criteria, but there was some missing information in the studies that weren't reported, and so they describe that here. So the last section is the very last section, I should say, of the discussion section will do one of two things depending on the review and how it's intended to be used. So the first is to say, if this review was performed for the purposes of identifying future research questions, then this last paragraph will describe research that needs to be done. In this case, this review was done to try to set up clinical practice guidelines for referring patients for treatments. And so they're looking here at the clinical application and sharing that in another article with clinicians so that clinicians can make informed decisions. But they do note, because the quality of the research, there's always going to be quality issues in any research. More research is needed, and we want to say specifically why. You can't ever say in a paper more research is needed, but what they want to do is they want to be able to look more into the research to figure out what's effective, they say safe and effective, and which treatment combinations and sequences are most effective. So this is really important because they did not look at combined treatments. They looked at one treatment compared to nothing, one treatment compared to another. So they're setting the stage for where to go next. So if there's a disclaimer, it's reported here. Funding, again, is reported here. Various disclosures. When you get to the end of a systematic review, there they report where the study protocol is, but you have the rather lengthy reference list. And so if we just scroll through the reference list to the end just to appreciate the depth of this project. 132 citations were included in this paper. And so if you're interested in low back pain or at all in research, you can mine this reference list to find the studies. Some of these references were included just as reference material in the introduction, and the remainder were analyzed in this research. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how to read a research review, but also knowing that the design of the review is going to introduce and minimize bias depending on what the authors set out to do.